Today on the Fixed Ops Mastermind, a good friend of mine and the Fixed Ops community, Joe Clementi, Executive Vice President for Traver Connect. Welcome back, Joe.
Dave, thanks for having me. I've been excited to get on another show with you, so thanks for having me.
It's great to have you back, Joe. And so this show is broken up into 3 segments, and those 3 segments today are going to be human capital, business success, and lastly, the payoff. And so, are we ready? Let's get
I'm
into
ready.
it. All right, let's get into it. Segment 1, human capital. Joe, first question I want to ask, where'd your automotive journey even start?
So my journey started very uniquely. I guess probably not as unique as I thought. So I started off, I tried to figure out, hey, how do I pay my way through college? I started selling vacuums, Kirby's, and my folks said, whoa, time out. That's not a respectable job. If you're gonna do something like that, go sell cars. And so I got into sell cars and as a way to pay for my education. And I loved it, and so I did a lot of the roles through the dealership and through the years, and eventually ended up running and operating and partnering in a Honda dealership here in California for 17, 18 years, and worked for a couple of different organizations prior or after that. So it's in my blood. It's kind of who I am, much like yourself and many people that listen to your show. And I'm just excited to be back in it after being out a little bit out of that industry directly for the last decade. I'm excited to be back in.
Yeah, you were never actually out of it. You were
Yeah.
right. You were just a little bit different part of the business, and I love that you started selling Kirby vacuums.
Yeah.
I remember the Kirby vacuum salesman coming around. So
Well, you know what? The thing I loved about it, they started every day with a ton of energy. It was all about how enthusiastic you were, and that carried over to my automotive career.
yeah, and that's a great lesson, right? You
Yeah.
gotta start your day energized.
And you when you go into the automotive industry, all you have is your energy, right? All you have is what you bring because you don't
Right.
know anything
Hmm.
about what you're doing. So yeah, just rely heavily on that energy. And then when you learn a little bit more, you kind of lose the energy. So you got to figure out how to happily balance those. And over the years, it's just been definitely a passion project.
That's excellent. So, Joe, on LinkedIn, a lot of people are gonna know you by your hashtag Coach Joe.
Yes, sir.
Uh, was there a moment when you realized that you just truly loved coaching?
The moment I realized that I love coaching was really when I embraced the concept of servant leadership. There's something really deeply powerful about seeing people transform. And it occurs when they align their potential with purpose. And I never talk about success and you're going to be exceptional. I always talk about what your potential is. And when those two align, it's so powerful. And I think when you witness how servant leadership positively impacts both professional and personal lives
Mm-hmm.
through those strategies that we develop together, it's incredibly rewarding. It's so powerful to see people evolve into their own potential.
Yeah, it's one of the very cool things about coaching. Is that you are getting as much out of it as them, and sometimes you get more out of it than the other person.
100%. If you're a good coach, if you're really authentically involved, engaged, you're going to get more value out than you give
Hmm.
because as you know, a really good coach is going to ask a lot of questions
Yeah.
and you're going to learn some behaviors that are intuitive to or innate to that person that you can help bring out. It's pretty powerful. I have a kind of a mission, purpose, and intention, and I'll just outline it this way.
Yeah.
My mission when I go into coaching, I want to provide easy to implement items that are scalable.
Hmm.
And then my purpose, I want to inspire and drive leadership multiplication. I talk about that a lot because it is cross functional across many organization levels. And lastly, my intention is that I need to equip people, at least in my passion, I need to equip people, easy for me to say, with the tools, advice, and coaching that they need so that they can be their best selves. Ultimately, that's the goal. How do we equip them? And I think as a person, who you're becoming is far more important than the person you've been.
Yeah, that's that. So let's talk a little bit more about that. The person you're becoming as opposed to the person that you were. Um, how much should somebody rely on the past though to at least understand where they're going or where they are?
Yeah, it has to serve as a foundation, right? Because when you fail, there are lessons that are so valuable in that failure. And our past teaches us so many things. However, we can't remain dependent on that past. Our successes aren't dependent on the past. We can build on them,
Yeah.
but they don't define us, right? And neither do our failures. Neither do the things that the way we were brought up, our historical background, the things that our teachers taught us, our environments, and I'll talk a little bit about that as well. Those influence us, but we're not dependent upon that past.
I love that. And so people always talk about it. You got to have a good foundation, right? And if you think about what you just said, it's the same thing if somebody is doing a complete remodel of a house, right? You've still got the foundation, which is the past, right? But what you build on that foundation is not dependent on what was there previously,
Right,
right?
right, right. Well said. And that architecture that draws the blueprint, leadership and coaching is the same analogy. You have to have a blueprint. You have to know where you would like to go in order to get there. You don't have to build the house in a single day.
Right.
So
That's
I
great.
love that analogy because I think it ties into some of our later discussion points as well.
Absolutely. So, Joe, what is it that you really love about coaching?
I love this question because I love the openness. I love the vulnerability. But more importantly, I love the authentic connection that we have with people. And coaching helps us foster that. It's the gap, it's the bridge, right? That helps us close the gap.
Hmm.
And I think when you align people with a higher sense of values and align their actions with those values, it leads to more purpose driven life, right? It creates a conscious alignment and it helps people realize that their actions must align with their values. And many times they don't often align.
Hmm.
And I think, as I said a little bit earlier, and we talked about, our beliefs are shaped by our upbringing, our experiences, and our environments.
Hmm.
When we challenge and replace limiting beliefs, we tap into the innate potential that exists in every one of us, and coaching opens this door. It allows that transition to happen. That's what I love about coaching. And when you connect with someone and they're applying what we discuss, all of a sudden they're coming to you with more victories. They're coming to you
Hmm.
with the positive items. And how do I replicate this, right? I think you and I have talked about this at great length in the past. Coaches do not have all the answers.
No.
We don't. We just
No.
have different questions. We have different set of lenses that we use to see
Hmm.
things through. So
I think one of the things that a great coach is relentless curiosity, right? And
love
that
that.
allows us to ask those questions.
100. I love that statement because it's 100%. If you're really curious, you're inherently going to ask better questions.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Joe, we're going to move into segment two, which is business success. And I'm sure this is a question that a lot you have a big following on LinkedIn. Something that I'm sure people want to understand. What drives someone to move companies after almost 10 years with Mobility Works?
Yeah, people naturally ask why leave and why now, right? For me, it's not about money and it's no external factors. It's about answering to, in my own eyes, a higher calling.
Mhm.
It's to continue to develop people, to enhance organizational performance, and I've said this earlier, to multiply leadership. That's why you make a change. When you see there's an opportunity or an alignment, and where I align with John Traver and Traver Connect, that decision became so much more clearer. And so I'll put it this way. Joining Traver Connect wasn't about taking on a new role. It wasn't a title. It wasn't about money, but it was aligning with a company that feels that we can transform teams in the automotive sector. And leadership is about building towards that. It's seeing that vision and continuously building towards that. And I think Traver Connect and John Traver especially is driven by a purpose, which aligns with my values. He
Yep.
has a good, clear mission, a bold vision, and it's that shared vision of how we help dealerships thrive in this incredibly competitive marketplace, right? And in a world that's in constant change, it's those that lead with purpose that are going to define the outcome. And I think at Traver Connect, that's exactly what we're doing. And that's where the alignment happened for me.
I love that statement that those that lead with purpose are going to be the ones that define the outcome. Um, and I can tell you that from knowing you and from knowing John, that's perfect alignment there, but between the two of you.
It really is. And I'm blessed and honored to have the opportunity. It doesn't change the rearview mirror. It doesn't change
No.
the team in the past and what we were able to accomplish. It's just a forward looking vision. So I'm really excited. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, your time at Mobility Works was the foundation that we talked about in the first segment, right?
Yeah, well
Yep.
said. Yes, I
Yep.
never thought of it that way, but I
Yeah.
appreciate that
Now,
statement. There's the
now
coach
you
in
get to build a new house.
you. Exactly. There is the coach from you. Thank you, coach.
I love it. So Joe, knowing you, I know that you are a spreadsheet guy. I know you put a lot of stuff together, presentations and things, and it always looks impeccable. What I want to know is how do you balance that methodical side of you with the psychological and motivating Joe Clementi that a lot of us see on LinkedIn?
Thanks, Dave. The key is to understand that data is just a tool. It's the tool in the tool chest that we use. It helps us navigate. It should never, ever dictate your vision, your values, and your mission.
Hmm.
It provides you with leading. Hey, what's going to predict the future? Lagging what happened in the past. But data itself doesn't exist in a vacuum, and neither does performance, right? So what it can do though is highlight where we need to adjust or adapt. So I use the analogy, say a technician is struggling with a particular repair. We can either continue to let him struggle or we can provide the resources. We can intervene using the data
Yeah.
to provide that person with the resources to improve. We can use that same analogy for an advisor. So in theory, an advisor should be doing every recommendation. So at that recommendation, if that advisor is not comfortable, they're not going to present it. You know that.
Yeah.
And so if you use data to alter the behavior, to adapt, and then provide insights to coach up, guess what happens? Now that person aligns more with what the data is telling them.
Hmm.
If we use it as a weapon, right, and we say the data, Dave says you never present X, Y, and Z, so either get it right or get out, right? And that's when it can become destructive. So as long as you're using it with an alignment, you can do it so that at the micro level,
Hmm.
you can understand root cause. And if I don't want to if I don't want to recommend, let's just say it's a transmission flush, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
align with my values, just is this as an example. If I don't want to recommend it, guess what's going to happen? I'm not going to recommend it.
Right.
However, if you use data and then you insert training to help me understand the value of that,
Hmm.
I'm going to change my behavior. Isn't that what leadership is? I believe this with my heart. I talk about it all the time. Leadership is changing behaviors, not opinions.
Yeah. I mean, you really, it's very hard to ever change somebody's opinion about something, right?
Right.
That rarely happens, but you can change
Yeah.
and affect a behavior. And I love what you were saying about data, and the word that I want to insert in front of data is useful data,
Yeah.
right?
Data
Because
integrity. Yes.
we're in fixed ops, man. We got data. We got heaps and heaps and heaps of it. But is it
Yeah.
useful to you, right? Are you using it for those purposes? Are you using it to help that advisor make better recommendations? Are you using it to help the technician to see why they should recommend certain repairs or how to do a repair differently so they don't need to struggle again?
Yeah, and if you think about, as we talked about earlier, if you weaponize it, it actually works against you. If you're chasing a metric from, and I'm an NADA graduate, if you're chasing a metric just to chase the metric, you're not changing behaviors. All
Yeah.
you're doing is weaponizing and saying, "Hey, Dave, we're not achieving this objective," right? You gotta do it at a micro level, understand root cause, and then alter the behavior. Even if my example is I convince you, Dave, go sell every one of these transmission flushes, and you're going to, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, whatever you say, boss, I'm going to do it. All I've done is change your opinion. I haven't changed your behavior. So ultimately, how we use data is what's really important. Data is insightful if you can look at it going forward.
Hmm.
Useful data, right? That data
Yeah.
integrity is key. How you use that data is really where the rubber meets the road. Sorry for the pun, but it is true. It's where everything connects together. And so
Yeah.
many times we get lost, right? I've heard you talk about this before. If a service manager sits at his desk all day and just stares at numbers,
Yeah.
we're not altering at the micro level. We're not changing the course. We're not changing behavior. All we're doing is managing to the numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, those numbers that you're looking at are all lag metric numbers, right?
Right, right.
That's all something that already happened. You cannot change those numbers that are on that screen by sitting there looking at that screen.
Right, you pick up a doc sheet and you go, "Oh, this is what happened yesterday.
Yeah.
We were great. We were the best thing ever, or we
Yep.
sucked," right?
Mhm.
Neither one of those pieces of data is going to change the future,
Right.
but there are leading indicators, right? There are,
Mhm.
what does Thursday's schedule look like?
Yes.
How do I adjust to my capacity? How do I build? How many calls am I missing, for example?
Mhm.
It's a leading indicator.
Yep.
So it's how you use that information that's so powerful. And I'll say it again because I say it a lot. Leadership is changing behaviors, not opinions. And when we alter behaviors, amazing things happen. People all of a sudden come to you with solutions, right?
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing when you start to get that, right? And that's I used
Yeah.
to always tell my teams, I am happy to hear any concern that you have, but please also be prepared to discuss a solution to that concern that you have, right? The answers, as you said earlier, we don't have all the answers,
No
right?
way.
And,
Yeah.
and so we need everybody's input to get to those answers. And that's why when the Fixed Ops Mastermind started, right? I used to say from 4 months to 40 years in the business, you're welcome here because you all have something to give to us. You have that 4 month person has a different set of eyes than I do 40 years into the business, that can give us a look that changes the way that our perspective of the business.
Yeah, 1000%. I love that perspective because, to your point, everyone sees something different.
Hmm.
You think the write up happens the same way every time. And then you ask your customers, how does the write-up work? And they tell you something different. You ask your porter how the write-up works. You ask your express drive writer. You ask your technician. You're going to get 5 different answers,
Yep.
right?
And then you pull your process sheet out and it's completely different from the 5 different
Very
answers
right.
that you got. Right. But if you're sitting in your office, you will never know that.
Right.
You need to be out there to understand that stuff. So, Joe, last question in this segment. What does a successful business do differently from other businesses?
I really love this question, and I hope you'll give me a little bit of bandwidth on this one
Yeah.
because I'm passionate about organizational performance. And part of the studies that I do is try to understand what do successful businesses do differently. So I'll start off by saying this. Really, truly successful businesses begin with a crystal clear vision, values, and mission. They're crystal clear on those elements. And they aren't just words on a sheet of paper, they live it. It's part of their DNA.
Yeah.
It guides every decision and every action. So, crystal clear vision, values, and mission. And I also believe that a successful business doesn't leave success to chance. They define it, they define their strategies, they align their tactical actions, and that directly contributes to achieving their objectives, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
Those actions and tactical behaviors achieve their objectives. What sets business apart is the way they connect their team to their vision, the way they connect their actions to their vision. We used the analogy a little bit earlier, the architect, right? And building the framework.
Mm-hmm.
So much like an architect, leaders need to have a clear plan because it does set the foundation. It does build up and out, if you will. And they've got to ask themselves, what kind of culture do we want to create? And how are we guiding our decisions through our core values? A strong foundation allows people, teams, successful organizations to weather anything. Regardless of market climates, they're able to weather it because everyone knows the game plan. And I also believe that successful businesses, and it's factually true, they heavily invest in their team, in their people.
Yeah.
They invest, they recognize that strategy is only as good as the people that execute on them.
Mm-hmm.
And when you foster a culture of transparency, a culture of empowerment, a culture of responsibility, I think people get confused between responsibility and accountability. Those are 2 different things.
Yeah.
When you're responsible, you own the actions. That's really important. And they make sure that everyone on the team is aligned and, really importantly, equipped to handle it at the highest level.
That was a master class right there. Uh, and Joe, so that my coaching program was called Vision and Values, and what I call those two together, or what they become together, is the morality of the business, right? And you typically don't think of a business having morality, but that's really what it becomes, right? Because when you have a clear vision and you have clear values, it gives a clear picture of how you should act within that system.
Amen. I've never heard that before, the morality, but I'm stealing it because I love it. And it is so true. Listen, your culture is alive and thriving whether you're aware of it or not. I know
Mhm.
this is not specifically about culture, but successful businesses have a strong culture and
Yeah.
they connect their people to that culture. If your organization as a dealership is the only culture is tied to the bottom line,
Mhm.
I can almost assure you that you're going to have high turnover rates. You're going to
Yeah.
have disconnected people. You're going to have front versus back or sales versus service.
Yep.
You're going to have conflicts, and you're going to have an environment where people only care about themselves. Hey, how do I get paid?
Right.
I don't want this job, Dave. I want that one because that's how I get paid. Right.
Yeah.
And then it becomes less about really serving the customer and more about how much money I make.
Right.
And
And the funny thing is if if they realized that serving the customer is what allows them to make more money.
Yeah, well, the customer is why we exist, right? Because if we
Yeah,
don't have a customer, we're fired. If a
right.
customer fires us, then we think, well, we'll just replace them. But in today's environment, when a customer fires you, 30 other people, maybe 50 other people fire you in accordance, right? And ultimately what the culture does do is allow you to see other things with a different set of lens, right?
Yeah,
So at Traver Connect, I'll use this as a selfish plug, but
yeah,
what we're really trying to do is help reduce the friction for your customer. How
yeah,
hard is it to make an appointment today? And then make it easier for you at the dealership level to reconnect with your customers.
yeah.
John calls it experience matters, right? And it
Yep,
really, truly does. Theirs, yours, ours.
yeah,
And those elements tied together is what we're talking about. When you define a successful business, everyone is tied to a common culture. They get it. And that morality, using your word,
yep.
is the customer's experience. How we own the outcome is really important. Unfortunately, we always want to get to the financial results, right? This is only the only thing that matters. That's a byproduct of doing everything right, right?
A- Absolutely. That's
Do
it,
you
Joe.
think,
Every store that I went into, um, and so I used to love taking over broken stores, right? There was you go into a high performing store, great, whatever. You go into a broken store and you can turn that around. There's a real sense of accomplishment there, and you can see that sense of accomplishment in the people that are there with you making that happen. But I always told them the same thing: we cannot focus on getting good CSI. What we need to focus on is helping the team feel better, which will help our customers feel better, which will get us better CSI. And in the end, we will all make more money because of that, right? The end is not good CSI and more money. That is the end, rather. That's
that's
the
the
end, not the
byproduct.
beginning, right? Because when I was getting brought into these stores, a lot of the as you're going through interviews, they're like, we need to fix our CSI. We need to fix our CSI. Okay, well, I can tell you that it's not the CSI that's the problem, right?
Right,
It's not
right.
that survey. It's everything that happened around that.
100%. It is the processes and the people that are connected to the culture.
Right.
And byproduct is so important. It's easy for a dealer or a smart dealer, and there are a lot of them out there, to understand the data integrity and say, okay, I can see our financials are performing poorly. So we have to be dramatic in our approach, i.e., CSI,
Yep.
right? And the reality is, no, you're looking at it at a macro level. If you dig a little deeper,
Right.
root cause analysis, you'll find that often there's a disconnection between the people, the processes, and your core values. That's what
100%.
successful businesses does. Jim Collins wrote about this in Good to Great, and that study narrowed it down to 20 of the most successful organizations in the country, in the world, and some of the things that were congruent with those organizations. And it ultimately always ties back to their people are aligned in their culture, right? They invest in their people and they're consistent.
Yep. You
So,
you just said it again, Joe. I wrote it. I wrote it down when you said it the first time. But invest in your people. You said it. You said it 3 times now in this last segment. It's such a huge thing. And 2 things I want to point out about that. Number one, you didn't say train your people. You said invest in your people. Right. It's a big difference. Uh, and just the fact that you're talking about putting that time into your people, into your teams, is huge, and the reason that you are as successful as you are.
yeah, thank you, Dave. I really am I'm humbled by that really kind comment. But I do believe that when you invest in people, the reciprocal value is exponential.
Yes.
It impacts everyone around them, right? And they become more, I'll use the word loyal because I think that's really important. They
Hmm.
become more loyal to your organization. And guess what? so does the byproduct. Your customer becomes more loyal to you as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? We talk
Yep.
about retention, and I'm sure we'll have time for that later, but retention, that's
Right.
really wonderful. It's important. It's an OE driven outcome, though.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, the more connected you are with your customers, the more loyal they are to you, the more they'll spend, but more importantly, the more frequently they will return because they love the experience.
Absolutely. Joe, that's a perfect segue to take us into segment three, which is the payoff of all this. This segment is brought to you by PartsEdge. Your parts department is the backbone of your dealership and is responsible for nearly half of your total profits, according to NADA. Our system works within your DMS for a hybrid approach that combines the precision of automation with the nuanced decision making of parts experts. Joe, again, hashtag Coach Joe. Coaching is pulling out the best in people. How do you go about doing that?
There's no one size fits all approach, right? I think Simon Sinek said this really well. There are characteristics and there are attributes, and they manifest themselves as strengths or weaknesses. The role as a coach, my role as a coach, is to help individuals identify their attributes and lean into those. And I use a straightforward strategy. It's 5 steps, at least in my perspective, is how do you identify your mission and how does that intersect with the needs of others? If you're not serving others, you can't be good at what you do. I really believe that.
Yeah.
Number two, define your core values. What's important to you? Um, Number three, clarify your contributions and intentions. Number four, reflect in the past, especially your lessons learned.
Mhm.
And number five, commit to applying the actions that you've identified. So without action, it's all of that is has no value. People have to act. A person has to be well invested to act. And if they are committed, you and I talked about this offline one time where someone said, I'll pay you more. I'll pay you X. I'll pay you Y. I'll keep paying you. And the easy thing to do for a coach is accept that money.
Right.
The difficult thing is say no, because you're not really invested. We could talk about actions and you might not take any of these. What's the point?
Yep.
So it's really important that you have a vested party that says, yeah, Dave, I really want to get better. I really want to improve.
Mhm.
And, we as coaches, our job is just to help people do the things they already know how to do, but bring it out of them, right? I call it their inherent genius, right? The things that are natural to them and just bring that out. And I think coaching is the gateway.
Mhm.
And when people understand how to tap in their innate genius, the results are amazing. They're more rewarding for me than they are the individual.
Yeah. And that perfect segue again into my next question. What do you typically see as far as improvements from coaching someone?
The most impactful item, I guess I could say, is when people connect to their why. When they really understand, hey, why am I taking on coaching? Is it to make more money? Well, no, not really. I really want to become this or do that. It's the deeper they do their why analysis, when they become more connected to it, it improves their professional and personal life. And
Mhm.
I see, especially when it comes to communication within their circle of influence, people become more intentional. And that byproduct is it shapes their character and it helps them make better and deeper connections with other people. And ultimately, they say to me, wow, I can't believe something as simple as this made a difference because I listened to my daughter a little bit better. I paid more attention to my spouse, or at work, instead of just jumping into an answer, I listened a little bit further. And that transformation is really them.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
just those are the subtle improvements that people have brought forward as a result of a good coaching strategy.
Yeah. Coaching to me a lot of times, and Joe, I'm gonna show our age here. The highlights magazines when you were a
Yeah.
kid, and
Yeah.
there was the picture with that was drawn with all hidden stuff in it, right? And you couldn't see a lot of the things. You knew what you had to find, and then once you found it or somebody pointed out to you, you couldn't stop seeing it, right? So
Yeah.
there was a giraffe hidden in there somewhere that you couldn't see when you looked at the picture. You finally found it, and now every time you look at that picture, you see that giraffe. And that's what coaching helps people do. They help them see what was already in there and bring that out and let them focus on that.
Your answer is better than mine. I actually love your answer because it's so that story is so true because when you start to see things, right, and all of a sudden you're like, I recognize that behavior. I
Yep.
recognize that destructive behavior or that partnering behavior, that behavior that really helps other people perform at a
Yeah.
higher level. That's
Mhm.
exciting. It's really, truly exciting. You can't unsee it, to your point.
Exactly. Exactly. So Joe, to close this out, what would you like to see change in coaching?
I think the misconception that coaches are experts and they have every answer. That's the one thing I think is really important. Every coach has to be a subject matter expert, I guess, but
Yeah.
we don't have all the answers. And when you are asking the right questions, better, more intuitive questions, you're going to get better results. So I'd like to see people recognize the value that coaching provides when they invest in themselves. And that's what it takes. You know, if you take a professional athlete, they don't just have coaches on the field, they have a subject matter expert that
Yeah.
is relative to their business. So maybe it's a business coach, maybe it's a personal coach that aligns them with their family life, or there are myriad of different attributes to that.
Hmm.
And I think the players that maximize their potential, there aren't just financial rewards in that, right? It affects every aspect of their life. And when you fine tune, I like to call it hardwiring. When you hardwire we call it soft skills. That's the word in
Yeah.
today's word. But I really think when you hardwire those soft skills, all of a sudden they become part of who you are as a person. You don't have to change, you don't have to be fake, and that authentic person just comes out. And it's amazing when if people could just see coaching as more than just this negative connotation to people chasing a paycheck. It doesn't have to be that. People
Hmm.
that are vested like you are, and I know that I am, and many other experts are. Um, they care about your outcome, right? That's way
Yeah.
more important than any monetary gain. It just
Mhm.
is.
Yeah, I can tell you, I got a message the other day from somebody that I coached. I don't even know how long ago it was, 4 or 5 years ago, and I got a message just reaching out saying, "Hey, thanks very much. Your coaching was impactful, and it's really helped me in my career." That meant way more than the money that I got 4 years, 5 years ago from him to
Yeah.
do that coaching, right? That's the payoff. It's not the money. The money disappears, it gets spent, but that feeling doesn't go away.
It is the most rewarding aspect of being a vested coach
Yeah,
is seeing the transformation and then someone just say, thanks, coach. I appreciate that perspective. I have changed because of this. And when that happens, when someone calls you back and just says, hey, I just want to let you know, it not only helped me professionally, but I'm a better dad. I'm a better mom. I'm a better
mhm,
sister, brother, aunt, uncle, whatever that might be.
yeah,
That's powerful and it's lasting.
it sure is. Joe Clementi, Executive Vice President with Traver Connect. This has been an incredible time with you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a blast. I could talk for an hour more with you. So we have just shared emotions. And remember, I'm going to steal your metaphor. And so if you see me using it, it's because
Absolutely.
I got this from Dave. So
It's
thank
all
you.
it's all good. It's all good. You take anything you need. Joe, again, thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you for having me. I had a blast, Dave.